This might be a fun one, Austin. You're getting like up since 5 a.m. on 3 hours of sleep, Joey. So I should just apologize for whatever manic machinations come from my fucked up melon.
Why did you have to get up so early?
Normally, I take privilege in like not having to be on set, like at the early call time.
Yeah,
it's like one of the perks of having a little experience under the belt, like being the boss a little bit, right? But boy, howdy, did I have to do that for the last couple of days. We were Let me. If you ever heard me complain about traffic in Los Angeles before, I needed to be somewhere on the other side of the 405 in Culver City by 6 a.m. So that means that if I didn't leave by 5, I was never gonna get there. Because the other day when I left late, it actually took me 2 fucking hours and change to get to work. So I really need to move. And we're filming another Coinbase commercial with the Counter-Strike team, which was fun. But we were filming like outside of a 100-year-old hotel in downtown Culver City. So everything was like a relic, and we had to treat everything with like white gloves because everything in there is ancient, and it was a whole fiasco and probably worth more than probably not as much as value as we thought it would be. But we had a good time. We filmed the thing. I think it's funny. People will see it soon, but boy howdy is my sleep bad. I'm gonna finish recording this and then I'm gonna go hit the honk shoe immediately.
You record because you're a big fucking player. Just retired, right? Nitro?
Yeah, Nitro.
That's a big deal.
Mr. Nick is not here. I think that his statement is that he's not sure what next steps are, but homie just had his second kid. He has a family. If you're... if you want to play Counter-Strike at the highest level, you have to basically live in Europe, because the scene in North America is arguably more dead than the Dota scene in America is.
Yeah. It's impressively dead. Yeah.
And bad.
It's really bad.
It's really, really, really bad.
Which leaves like, what is NA good at that point?
Rocket League.
Is NA good at Valorant? Because that is the only thing that's really left in the normal, like, console games are their own thing, because it's not, I don't really consider most console games like a full international competition, because it's just not like big enough in some places to have a console, right? So when it comes to esports, international competitions, right? Mm-hmm. CSGO, Dota 2, League of Legends, North America not doing so hot anywhere.
Rocket League, I think we're okay at Apex still. I don't know if that matters. I don't know if either of those two matter very much.
Not sure if that game matters anymore.
Valorant was like supposed to be. They were kind of like a shining light of being successful and competing on international stage. But we're like Tokyo which is the first big international event for Valorant, is starting like soon/nowish, and we'll see if that holds true. And then their big TI event is going to be in Los Angeles. So maybe it's Valorant. At least in Valorant, they are proving to be competitive, because everywhere else they're just not.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the start. I feel like the start of any esport, North America, is competitive, and then the longer it goes on, aka the better people get, and the more experience and the harder work you have to put into it, North America usually falls off.
We're not even the best at Ultimate or Smash at this point, because Japan is so good, and like Spargo is from Mexico. MK Leo's from Mexico.
Yeah. It's not great for old NA, but we still have the best talent, right? So we always got that going for us.
So you're saying the entertainers is what's there. You don't need the players as long as you have the best talent that will fly across the world.
We only speak one language, and it is English, so we can do broadcasting in that language and be good at it. Good stuff.
Congratulations. Are you getting on a plane to go to DreamLeague to go do that thing you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm potentially leaving tomorrow in like 14 hours for potentially 7.5 weeks.
There's like two potentials. Like you have a flight booked tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's one less potentially. So that means that you would go from DreamLeague, which is in Sweden, to
Stockholm.
Bali, directly.
Yep.
And
when DreamLeague ends is as soon as the major goes. So that'll probably be the thing for forever, right? Because you have and only so much empty space in the calendar. So ESL is likely going to dominate as much of that space as possible, right? So it's you pretty much go right up until the international event, because the teams probably I don't know if the teams necessarily decided this or what, but I would assume they would rather have a back-to-back DreamLeague into major deal rather than have DPC directly into DreamLeague and then have a week break, and then the major. So yeah. And then DreamLeague to Bali to Riyadh.
How many suits do you pack for that?
Right now, one.
Right now, one. And then you just get that look, and that's like your finals look, and before that, it's casual?
Yeah. Okay. Let's say if I was to go to Bali, then Ellie would probably come with me to Bali, and she could bring me some extra suits for if I was to do Bali. And then if I was to go do Riyadh after that, I would need the extra suits. Yeah.
Also,
legitimately though, I don't know if I'm actually gone for 7.5 weeks or not.
That's what.
But it's one of those situations where I'm leaving. We haven't yet, actually gotten. We don't actually know if I'm working all of these events. So I'm leaving. And when I come back is a question mark, which I've done that a couple times in my career. When you have like weeks that go past 6 weeks or events that go past 6 weeks back to back to back, then people don't usually figure out their talent, lock it down till like a month and a half beforehand.
Well, other good news for you is that if you happen to like need anything while you're in Bali, your old pal Joey could also potentially bring it to you.
I heard about that today, actually.
From who?
Who do you think?
It's only one of three people.
Yeah. Yes. Ken and I played disc golf today.
Yeah.
So he asked me about Bali, and he said you were going. So I was
it's still not booked, which is kind of a problem because, dude. Holy shit. Tickets from Los Angeles to Bali with like less than a couple weeks notice, not cheap. I'm going because we got to make some stuff, like both for Bali and potentially Riyadh, but like, dude, I want to stay at the same place as everybody because it's going to be easy, but everybody's staying at like a luxury resort. And I have to do this thing where I have to go talk to all my bosses tomorrow and be like, okay, so the thing is everybody's staying at a luxury resort. And I promise that I'm not trying to just stay at a luxury resort. But the next closest place is like a 15-minute Uber, which doesn't exist.
Yeah, that is a little messy. I mean, I would say probably not everybody is staying at that resort. There's probably some production, maybe some other people staying at some other place. We could talk about it after the podcast.
We'll coordinate that. I don't need to talk specific details. But that's a good conversation to have. But I'm pretty sure that I'm going. We'll have a cameraman going, and we'll try and follow the team as they finally win the.
Because we're going to do the Monster Morning Show there. Is that why?
No, that should happen in Seattle. But man, if I can sell them on more of those, they. I don't want to talk too much shop, but
there's a second TI going on, a little place called Riyadh.
I think it's a hard sell for like almost everybody else. Look, I have an agreement for Monster for the year already. Not to talk too much shop, but I'm trying to pitch them on. It wouldn't be you or me specifically, but also doing a very similar format for the Counter-Strike majors.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because Monster wants to get into CS2, and believe it or not, I know I've said it before, they really liked the show we did. So
Hell yeah.
Well, whatever. But yeah, that's exciting. I'm going to Bali. I am pretty sure, and I'm pretty excited about it. Who would have thought that we would have been there twice in like 10 months? That's also kind of weird.
Yeah.
I'm still curious. I know it's something we've talked about before, so not to belabor it, but I want to know what teams are going to be trying super hard through DreamLeague and through Bali, because we have most of the same roster. Who do you kind of have your eyes on as we go into DreamLeague?
Well, I think the last time we did this, we didn't know all the teams going to Bali, so we could probably talk about that real quickly.
We could.
Yeah.
We could.
Yeah. All right. Western Europe, Tundra, Game of Gladiators, Liquid. No surprise there. Tundra, word was they were doing very, very well. They're probably ahead of everybody right now, meta-wise. And Quest Esports is the one maybe surprise. That would be Amar's team. They look pretty dope. Honestly, they will probably be top 8, maybe top 6. Could, if they do well enough, slide themselves into a spot for the major, but I think they would have to do, if I had to guess, they probably have to get like top 4, top 3 or something. The last major is worth more points.
You mean
so
for TI?
Exactly
if they win this, they could theoretically still qualify for TI. They are not out of the running.
Yeah. I just don't know how far up exactly they have to get. Because top first place is 600 points, fourth place is 450 points. You add in the extra 200, I think they got off of the DPC. And then you know, so I don't know where exactly they'll end up. Obviously, that changes with other teams getting points as well. So possibility, but they would have to do exceptionally well. But either way, they're a strong contender for TI qualifiers, certainly. Eastern Europe, we got Team Spirit, Bet and Boom, and 9 Pandas. 9 Pandas did manage to eke it out there at the end, and it was a little dicey for them, but they did manage to get third over Virtus Pro.
VP?
Yeah, they won a head-to-head matchup. It wasn't a tiebreaker. It was just happened to be the last match of the entire thing. So. China, PSG LGD, IG, Aster, and Azure Ray. They actually Azure Ray managed to get it over. If you don't know who Azure Ray is, that is the new Somnus team, right? Somnus, Chalice, FY, they talked about coming back and playing and not even necessarily getting a whole lot of money from it and anything like that. They just wanted to compete again, and they came back and they did well enough to knock out Extreme Gaming, which is the Ghost, Paparazzi, JT, Kaka, DY team. So they came back and just immediately knocked out a strong contender. So
that's because the regions, like, they have they even been playing? Like, are they just that good? They didn't even last a year in quote retiring.
Yeah. And it does make, especially since IG managed to do pretty well. They got second. It actually makes China look a little bit more competitive again. Maybe. We'll see how they do on the international stage. But it does look like they have 5 teams that are able to compete amongst 4 spots, which it's always good to see more teams than you have spots, which you can't really say that about China in the previous 2 seasons. So,
I mean, if China doesn't perform well at Bali, there is a realistic scenario where no team from the Chinese region gets an invite to TI.
Because nobody has locked down first place back to back in these DPC seasons. LGD hasn't done well enough.
LGD did first, then second, then third, with getting no points at either of the 2 majors, and they currently sit at 11th on the DPC rankings. So, say
they just got first on this 3rd season.
Yep, and they are number 11 out of 12 in terms of qualified teams. So they are like not scoring points in the major. 2 firsts
and a second in your DPC did not give you enough.
And I
think their chances are probably pretty high, but
they also lost some points because they had some player moves, right? They changed their offlane.
Oh, that would make sense.
But they're the only Chinese team even in the running right now, right? So if like, say, I don't know, Blacklist, Quest, Bleed, Execration, any of those teams outperform them, and so does Bet Boom, they're gone.
So their Knoxville's probability site had them at, this is the only number I look. He's got a whole bunch of numbers in here, and a lot of them are predictive Glico stuff. The only one I really care about is the qualify via points. And they are sitting at 75.9%. So they are sitting basically, there are a bunch of teams that are not, there's 3 teams that are not guaranteed, but basically guaranteed. 99 Pandas, Team Spirit, Beast Coast are 99, 99, and 98%. PSG LGD is the next on the list. So they actually, they're one of the few teams that are likely to go to TI, but there's a decent chance that they do not make it. There is a chance that all the wrong things happen basically to them. Because even if they get 0 points there, it still comes down to like all of these things that have to happen.
Yeah, the team that doesn't control their destiny right now and could really get knocked out because they're not at the major is TSM. They just need 3 teams to leap over them, which could be LGD, BetBoom, and then name another one, you know?
Yeah, TSM is currently sitting at 70% for a chance to qualify. And then the next up is Aster, 47%, BetBoom, 46%. So there's like just LGD and TSM are like, okay, they're decently likely apparently still to be able to get through. But yeah, I guess all bets are off on the last season. There's definitely some teams that are going to underperform, like teams that are maybe have already been doing well and kind of need a break. Gaming Gladiators and Liquid, I'm expecting to underperform. I'm not expecting both of them to be in the grand finals. I may even expect neither one of them to be in the grand finals.
I'm still not sold if that's the correct strategy. But maybe that's something I should take up with the coach or anybody else who's thinking that break time might be good because...
I mean, let's put it this way. You see a bunch of players. Soxa had it. K1 Hector for Beast Coast is apparently, he's not playing with Beast Coast right now because he needed a break. There are a lot of teams and players who have cited like burnout. Mm-hmm. So if you're... And unfortunately, fortunately from my perspective, you can't get locked in TI no matter how well you do at the first major and the first DPC. You kind of need to do it all the way through to the second major, which means if you have some sort of break period, it kind of has to be the third season.
Especially if you want to compete at Riyadh, right?
Because that's another
you're
thing,
not
right?
going to phone
Riyadh's
that in.
Second TI,
There's
so you kind of have to do. Yeah, exactly. So Bali's kind of weird in that setup, in that like you could not try hard for Bali, but at the very end of Bali, you do kind of need to be ramping it up, right? There's only a week between Bali and Riyadh, so
yeah. The best thing for those teams that are really on the bubble is to kind of just keep the status quo for all the teams that have been doing well. Because as soon as you start to see, like, Bleed have a tournament, Blacklist have a tournament, Quest have a tournament, God forbid Nouns have a tournament, then it gets scary.
Yeah.
And it's more likely to happen if maybe Tundra, Liquid, Gaiman, EG, any of them just go like, you know what, guys, we're on a beach. Let's have some margs.
Southeast Asia next. Bleed, Blacklist, and Execration. So some new squads coming in from C, which may ruin some other chances here. Talent did not make it through. Talent is already secured for TI, but they did get eked out by, funnily enough, a full Filipino squad in Execration. If you remember the 23 Savage interview where he talked about how he would, if he could manage a team, he would only have one Pinoy on it, because if you have two, the next thing you know, you've got a full Pinoy squad. Well, he ended up getting beat out by a Filipino squad. It was pretty entertaining and kind of sweet justice in some regards. So I thought it was pretty funny. And Blacklist also did well, which is the other really big Filipino squad. So two Filipino squads managed to beat out Talon. Bleed they're good. Hopefully they'll look as good as Talon on the first season. But other than that, North America, Shopify announced. That's obviously, we talked about it. TSM didn't make it in. North America uninteresting region until that happens, and then there's like, oh, that's cool. A third team made it in. They made it in over TSM because they beat TSM in a best of 3. So congrats. Hopefully they do well. Hopefully they do better than they did at the DreamLeague, because they got to play in an international competition. They did not do well, but hopefully they'll do better this go around.
Are they invited to the next DreamLeague? No, they're not, right?
No, they're not. So I had already checked that. And then that just leaves South America, which is EG and Beast Coast, who Beast Coast qualified. I'm fairly certain this is the case. They qualified with Parker while Hector was standing out. I believe he played in the final match against EG for their spot. Because they came down to the wire. Basically, if they didn't beat EG, they would end up at a tiebreaker against Beast Coast. Mm-hmm. And Parker stood in for K1 Hector in that like very clutch scenario. So it's kind of interesting. I thought maybe Hector would come back for, like that series specifically because it was so important, but he didn't, and they played with Parker. So the question is, are they going to keep playing with Parker? I don't think they've announced anything when it comes to Bali. So interesting.
I think that knowing who is going to be going to TI also means that, who's going to be going to Bali now means that the teams who aren't going to Bali, we have some like real finite eliminations from qualifying to TI via points. The most noteworty one to most people, I'm sure, is OG, who is not. If OG's going to TI, they're going through qualifiers. And in Europe, kind of scary, because who else they have to play against? They got to play against Entity. They might have to play against Quest. They're going to have to play against probably whatever roster Puppy puts together. They're going to have to play against whatever roster Kuroki puts together. None of those are guarantees. They did manage to squeak out. They did not get relegated. So, small silver lining.
Well, that's good. Still wonder what Valve's going to do about this, because Western Europe's just too good to only have 4 slots. But changing your form, 4 slots is already, in my opinion, kind of boring. For 8 teams, literally half the competition goes through. Still kind of feel like if you're going to give more slots to Western Europe, which you probably should, you have to make the upper division bigger. And if you make the upper division bigger, probably make the Div 2 smaller. Or why even have Div 2?
Because then there would be nothing for Nigma fans to watch if you get rid of Div 2.
And Alliance fans, yeah.
Oh man,
I saw Loda
tweeted today.
Yeah, it's, I'm sure it's a very stressful position to be in when you have been competing for getting to TI for year after year, and looks like this year is just, you're probably not even really competing. We'll see. It's possible that they sneak in the TI qualifier, but right now it seems like there are just way too many teams that are better than them that don't really feel like they have a shot.
It's I don't think Vegas would put odds on them or many of these people. Probably. Like, give me D1 Hustlers. Do they have to change their name again? They probably have to change their name again.
Yeah, they're going back to D2, so back to D2 Hustlers for them, and back to Division 2 for Puppy as well, which is interesting. I actually don't know if you end up upper bracket or lower bracket. I think if you are in the 3rd tour of the DPC upper division or Div 1, then I think you get upper bracket, even if you get relegated back down afterwards. So I think there's still have a chance to qualify in that regard, but yeah.
I think the top seed goes to 7th place, then the 2nd seed goes to 1st place of Division 2, and the 3rd seed goes to 8th place of Division 1. So they get upper bracket, but they're seeded 3rd.
Okay. Oh, yeah, because some of the teams will have already been through, so... Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Was there anybody else that? Yeah, we're really it's just Western Europe. Nobody really cares about who gets knocked down to Div 2 in any other region because no other region is competitive enough that you care about the 7th and 8th best teams.
Yeah, I mean it's not NA, SA, or China. Sometimes it's
Unless
interesting.
You're a specialist, you're a fan and you're just like a specialist of a region and you love watching that region, then yeah, maybe you care, but the grander audience, no, I don't really care.
I can make the smallest case that it is interesting that Boom was knocked down to lower division.
Yeah.
Only because of the heights that we saw them at last year, and even as the projection that they started this year with, that really it's been a consistent downward slope basically for the entirety of the year for them, and now it ends up with this.
Yeah. I mean, it was a little less interesting because they had already made that run before in season 1, right? So I feel like now it's expected at this point. It's a shame. I don't know. Something about that lineup just is not working. I feel like Yopaj, FBZ are good core players. Don't think there's anything wrong with the other players, but something's not working. So we're going to have to figure that out.
The only other team that might be interesting to even mention of not qualifying for TI is VP. They will have to go through Open, and they might have to face up against BetBoom if BetBoom doesn't show up at the major too. So
yeah.
It looks like 9 Pandas and Spirit are the teams that are kind of safe, and BetBoom VP will either be fighting. If you're a VP fan or player, you want BetBoom to qualify because that makes your open bracket way easier.
Yeah, for sure. I hope they don't. Because I think qualifiers are way more interesting when there are at least 2 teams that are kind of favorites and matching up against each other. So I hope that Boom chokes at Bali and then they can have a battle against VP because even VP, you don't it's a big brand, but a lot of those names you probably don't know very well. It's just FNG who's like the veteran, long-standing tier 1 player, right? So. And then the other lineups, no. The other lineups are all kind of whatever. Like some of those, I've casted tons of Eastern Europe and I recognize all of these players or a lot of these players, but it's not like players that I get excited about. And I don't think the audience gets excited about either.
Who do you think's going to do well at DreamLeague? We have groups out, and we have teams that are.
Who the fuck knows?
We have teams that aren't. I don't know. Let's talk about some of these teams that are going to DreamLeague that have clearly not done very well recently. OG. Okay. Entity got to stay in Division 1. They're still probably better than most teams because they're a Division 1 Europe team, right? Secret, 8th place Division 1 Europe. Really rough season. They're going to be playing there. I'm sure maybe there's a little bit of politics going on. TSM. They lost to Nouns. Talon also didn't qualify for Bali like we talked about, but they are going to be at DreamLeague. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams here out of the 16? It's a pretty meaty chunk that are not going to the major that you can probably argue are not top 16 teams. I'd give it to Entity. I bet Entity's a top 16 team.
I think. I think Talon is a top 16 team at an international LAN. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe not currently in there. I don't know. There's a lot of teams that have motivation to do well at DreamLeague. Because they didn't go to Bali, and there's a lot of teams who have not a whole lot of motivation for the same thing we talked about Bali, but even more so because some of these teams are probably already secured Riyadh. We don't know exactly. We talent don't know exactly how the rest of the teams are going to be determined. But they already secured one spot. There's 2 more spots going for this one, but then you still have to fill out the rest with like the top 16 teams. So presumably, for someone like Secret, if you get 3rd, let's say they don't get one of the guaranteed spots, but you get 3rd at DreamLeague, I feel like you're probably going to get invited.
Yeah.
Right? Because at that point in time, like because the Glico score, right? Like who you are playing against in order to get 3rd is all very high tier competition. So your rating within that system probably skyrockets. Right. Even if you didn't make it to Ball E, you still like your head to head matchups probably skyrocket your rating system. So, I bet they would actually be able to go to Riyadh off of that kind of performance. Meanwhile, Game of Gladiators Game of Gladiators secured it. Team Liquid, they're going to Riyadh. We know they're going to Riyadh. They don't need a secured spot to go to Riyadh, because they are obviously one of the best teams in the world, right? Mm-hmm. And you are going to invite them. So, like, Liquid has nothing to play for here. They could bomb out of DreamLeague, and I bet they would bomb out of Bali, and they would probably still be at Riyadh because, again, their score is probably insanely high because they play in Western Europe. They've been in grand finals at 2 majors. It's like no matter how bad you perform, it probably can't outdo what you've already accomplished. So, yeah, there are some teams that probably have nothing really to play for outside of money and competition.
I wonder, did Tundra go to the Super Major last year? Because 33 can't go to Saudi Arabia. And I wonder if that affects the
probably
math.
Applies to Fly. I mean, I think that's a weird situation. I don't know exactly how those visas work, but obviously they're extremely unlikely. Fly at least
he has a Canadian passport,
with a
right?
Canadian passport, yeah, so he's good there. But yeah, 33, that would be a problem for him, and that would probably take a lot of work to be able to get him to be able to go. I know that you can get into those places, but I don't know how much work it takes, right? I don't know how much work, like, would you need a sports visa? I mean, I have a feeling it's going to be fine. I have a feeling it's going to be fine because this whole Riyadh deal seems to be pretty fucking tied in with the powers that be. So feel like if something sticky happens there, you just send it up the line, and next thing you know, the prince signs a paper, and then you're good.
What if they spent all their money on golf though, and now they're like, guys, we gotta throw the Dota funds away?
That is really interesting, right? So if you guys don't know what he's referencing here, Saudi Arabia created their own golf league to compete with the
PGA.
The PGA, thank you. I was getting PGL in my head. PGA, and they threw a shit ton of money all over the place to be able to attract some top tier golfers, and they were pulling in people, and it was this crazy war. In fact, I highly recommend the Netflix Top Flight.
Full Swing,
I think. Yeah, Full Swing. Maybe that's it. Highly recommend that. It's just like Drive to Survive, but for golf. There was a couple of really good episodes in that, and they touch on Live is what it's called. And now Live has just folded into the PGA, apparently. And Saudi Arabia has some controlling financial interests, but not control over like where the courses are going to be and stuff like that. I don't know too much past that, but I know there is more control in Saudi Arabia on the financial side. They can control the sponsors and that sort of thing, but not so much the league activities, let's say.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend that I know too much more than that about it, aside from the fact that if you talk about it from a sports watching perspective or Saudi Arabia investment fund perspective, crazy interesting. If you talk about it from the perspective of all these PGA players like Tiger Woods, who turned down like $500 million to go play for Live, and instead were like, I have morals, and now they just kind of play for Live anyways. Wild. Wild.
Very, very, very interesting. What happens to all the players who took the money and moved over to Live?
Is it like a mixer situation? Like they
exactly. Do they get the full payout of what they got, or are they only going to get, I mean, no matter what it is, it was 100% worth it for all of those people, right? But I have to wonder how much of their original stated, 50 million, whatever, how much they're actually going to walk away with. They may only walk away with 25 million for a year of work for a
woe is them.
Contract that was probably for like 5 years or something like that. So yeah, all those guys have just got a huge jackpot, just like the Mixer deal. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Well, one question I'm curious about as we wrap up, like talking about DreamLeague and all that ish, like, so we can have like a really candid conversation about like, I don't know how many teams are going to try, all the leagues are back to back, what are they playing for, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
I feel like you can't really sell that narrative on broadcast. It's probably not what ESL, DreamLeague, or any of the teams want, is to imply that like maybe they're not trying that hard. So,
or IO for Bali,
yeah, either of them, right? So, is it going to be an interesting dance? Because if a team's underperforming, you probably just can't be like, they might be sandbagging. How do you dance around that as like a broadcaster?
I think you can't bullshit the viewers too much. I think you mostly highlight that there is a base level of competence that Gaming Gladiators, Team Liquid, whoever it is going to perform at. And that base level is very, very high. And it's probably, higher than many teams' peaks. So in order to beat them, you still have to be pretty fucking good. And yeah, maybe this isn't them at 100%. Maybe this is only them at 50%. But you still got to be really good to beat them at 50%. So you just highlight the other team's competency. And you can't really bullshit too much in saying Team Liquid, this is the best of the best. And then, they took down the Giants and they are now the best team in the world. Like, right? You could say they took down the best. But you can't say now that means they have supplanted them and they are the better team, right? You just can't go that next step. That's all it means.
Masterful.
I think for DreamLeague, it's the show is more fun, and I think we had our rehearsal, like not rehearsal, but we had our pre-tournament meeting Zoom call. Had a talk about the show and stuff like that, and they're going to lean even more into that because I think metrics wise they were probably looking at the numbers, and I think obviously when a game ends your numbers go down. That's the biggest thing for all tournament organizers is you get really high numbers during the game, but your numbers plummet as soon as the game is gone, right? I think that applies to every single game, every single sport, anywhere. But I think it applies probably a little bit more to Dota than some others because Dota players are very hardcore. So you want to try and limit that bleed as much as possible. And I think DreamLeague created a show that limited that bleed as much as you could probably expect. So the show that you saw in DreamLeague Season 1 or Season 20 or whatever it's called, I think they're going to lean into that even more because, we saw the success of it. So probably expect it to be a pretty fun show full of a lot of games and improv stuff and content and all that sort of thing. So that means basically a show that's actually maybe sort of somewhat interesting to watch when there's an hour-long break between games.
So anybody who's on set they're really gonna get their money's worth out of them, because they're gonna be like, okay, everybody, we're playing Dota Pictionary now.
That's a funny thing, is that DreamLeague and ESL are the same, right? But when it comes to these tournaments, the panel that do ESL shows, they don't have to do much work. You know, I sometimes hear some panelists say like 2 sentences after a game, and obviously they do a little bit more when it comes to the draft, but a lot, because the ESL show is like very fluid, and there's a lot of like content being thrown to, and there's a lot of there's the commercial breaks to go to, so it very oftentimes means that the panel just doesn't get that much time to talk. And so you don't have to do much work for the money that you get at ESL shows, but for this DreamLeague show, you're gonna have to put in a lot more work in order to get your normal day rate, which is pretty interesting. I mean, I enjoy watching it as a caster, because our job is the same for the most part, right? At every tournament, right? It's determined by how long the games are, and that's usually it. So I enjoy watching the panel do more work, personally.
I like watching some of them struggle.
you like the stretch, the attempted improv, the fill time,
Call me a masochist, but I used to assume that not everybody wants to be doing all those bits all the time, and sometimes you can tell more than others which people would rather be in a coffin.
Yeah.
And that makes me happy as somebody who's a little bit fucked up.
We've also got some fresh talent, which I think is going to be very interesting, because we have Fear and Winter as new talent for DreamLeague Season 20.
How many improv classes do you think?
Interested.
Do you think Clinton's taken? How many Fear improv classes do you think have gone?
And how much do you think that they want to do that sort of thing? I think Fear is mature enough that he kind of understands the game, you know. But I don't think he'll really enjoy it or want to be doing it. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Winter is not going to want to do stuff that is not talking about the game. So I'm gonna very much look forward to seeing those two on the improv shows. And then we've got Sunsfan and Cinderin, who obviously do very well if they have to do any improv, which sometimes the casters switch in for that stuff. So.
Well, we said we were going to do a short show because we both got to go to bed, but we were able to talk for 40 minutes about all of the leagues and what's coming up. There's one piece of news that actually came out right before we started recording today, which is that they being Valve have put an emphasis on playing with Turbo. Turbo is the game mode. I know that you're not a Turbo purist. You're a true Dota purist.
I'm a Dota purist. There is no such thing as a Turbo purist. You're already playing a bastardized version of the game. That's not possible for you. Like the pure is a family lineage. You literally can't have a bastard be pure in that regard.
I mean, there are people out there who just play Turbo, so this is exciting them. And every now and then it's just fun to just be Crystal Main and buy a couple Desolators because you're playing a Turbo game, right?
We'll see. Well, you play that game all you want. I'm just saying, you can't call yourself I'm a Turbo purist. Yeah, no, you can't do that. That's not how that works. The same goes with all random or ability draft. Can't say that either. Maybe you're obsessed with it, but you're not a purist when it comes to playing that, because you're already playing a bastardized version of the game.
I think people who play Turbo are just looking to have fun and play Dota and click around. I think
that's totally fine.
I think people who play ability draft are broken.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. They're you know what, the ability draft people are they're power gamers. They're people who want to feel and be powerful in the game and regular Dota doesn't enable that enough. So they need to they really need to have like the truly most broken hero possible. Like,
and they like to think
these
about
are the guys who like the fair competition. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in being really powerful. I want to feel that. I want to laugh at the impotence of other players as they try and bring me down.
Anyway, I'm going to jump off and play some turbo games.
No, you're not.
You're right. I'm dead. I gotta
He's lying to you, audience.
8 in the morning.
He's not going to go play turbo.
You got to practice for all the improv you're not going to do. Yes, and I would love to play turbo with you, Joe.
You should have chosen something other than saying, I'm going to go play turbo, and I would have played along with you, but no.
My limit for lying only goes so far. Oh, man. I will see you in Bali. I'm talking Sweden.
If I go to Bali, of course.
If you go to Bali, of course. Which we still don't know about, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop the recording so we can talk about that.